Welcome to A Pod Somewhere in Time. I'm your host, John, and I'm here with my co host, Matthias. You may be listening on Apple or Spotify or watching us on the Layer of the Alchemist YouTube channel. In either case, welcome. On today's episode, we are going to be discussing Iron Maiden's third studio album, The Number of the Beast, released on March 22nd, 1982. The album would see the introduction of Bruce Dickinson on vocals, Bruce cutting his teeth in the new wave of British heavy metal band Samson. He would audition for Iron Maiden in September of 1981 and quickly secure the job. Bruce's operatic vocal style would help push Iron Maiden to new heights, both commercially and artistically, and provide a melodic outlet to Steve Harris's writing that one could argue did not exist with Paul Di'Anno. Sadly, this would be the last album with Clive Burr, who was asked to leave the band for reasons left unknown at the time. The Number of the Beast would find the band exploring new and more adventurous songwriting territory with the introduction of metal classics like the title track and Run to the Hills, as well as the epic album closer, Hallowed Be Thy Name. Clive Burr would find his only writing credit with the band on the track Gangland, a co-write with Adrian Smith. Adrian would also receive a co-write with Steve on The Prisoner and 22 Acacia Avenue. History has told that Bruce was involved in the writing sessions, but unable to take proper credit at the time due to outstanding contractual obligations with his previous band, Samson. Speaking of the album's songs, the Japanese version of the album would feature deep-cut fan favorite Total Eclipse, sandwiched between Run to the Hills and Gangland. Penned by Murray, Harris, and Burr, the song was originally the B-side to the advanced single for Run to the Hills, the band regretting in the forthcoming years not placing it on the album in place of Gangland. The iconic Derek Riggs album art would cause some controversy amongst the religious conservatives in the US and place Iron Maiden squarely within the trendy at the time satanic panic. As the saying goes, there's no such thing as bad press, and with the added attention on Maiden, a new singer, and a batch of really strong songs, the album would break sales plateaus for the band all over the world, with it currently sitting at platinum status in the US. As with all Maiden records, there were singles released. In this case, Run to the Hills, backed with the previously mentioned Total Eclipse, and The Number of the Beast, backed with a live version of Remember Tomorrow with Bruce on vocals. Always a contender for the greatest metal album of all time whenever there's an internet poll, or anywhere you might find some metalheads discussing such topics over a beer. There's no doubt that The Number of the Beast holds a special place in Iron Maiden's catalog and a special place in most metalheads' hearts. Okay, Matthias, here we are with this monumental album. Monumental for many reasons. The introduction of Bruce, just a all-time classic metal record. What are your memories of hearing this album for the first time and your thoughts in general on this record?
Yeah, I know I am starting to sound a bit like a parrot here because it's the same thing as with the two previous albums we've discussed, as I borrowed Number of the Beast along with the first one and Killers at the same time from a soon-to-be friend of mine named Patek. So I got these albums more or less at the same time. For me, listening to Number of the Beast, I had heard the hits, the known songs from before, from live recordings. And so I was well aware of most of the songs, I guess. And I try to remember if I heard this prior to hearing Live After Death or after hearing Live After Death. But I think I might have heard Live After Death first. If not, it was about the same time as when Live After Death came out in '85, I think. But no memory. It's been a few years ago now. So for me, my introduction to Iron Maiden was Peace of Mind. So to me, Bruce Dickinson was the singer of Iron Maiden. And going back and then discovering the earlier records with Paul Di'Anno, that was the other singer in my book. So this was getting, after hearing Peace of Mind and then going backwards, listening to Number of the Beast was like more of the guy that was my singer of Iron Maiden. And, when you're a kid, things like that are important. I mean, Bruce was my singer, so in the same way that Adrian Smith was my. I mean, I didn't have that sort of relationship with Dennis Stratton. I never got one either.
Yeah.
Uh, but listening to Number of the Beast was, of course, a great experience. It's all great songs on that album, and yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. It was just more great music from my favorite band.
For me, as I mentioned in the previous episodes, the self-titled was the first Iron Maiden record for me. And then I got Number of the Beast. And I know I didn't get it right when it came out. Or who knows, maybe I might have. I don't think so. I'm trying to remember, as you just mentioned, this is quite a long time ago. So memories are foggy. And as I was trying to remember some of these details, I reminded myself that back then things moved at a different pace. Uh, Today, we're sort of in the instant gratification world where you pick
Mm,
up your phone and you listen to any song in the world. You order something on Amazon and it could be at your doorstep at the end of the day. Well, this was the era of you would order something online and it would take 4 to 6 weeks for it to get there. So things just moved at a much slower pace. So months back then kind of feel like what maybe days would feel like today. So it's a little hard to remember exactly. But and the other thing is that I knew nothing about Iron Maiden. And this again, if you're younger, you have to put your head in this space. If you're older, you'll remember this. What we like to call the low information age. No internet. None of my friends liked Iron Maiden. I knew nobody who liked Iron Maiden. Uh, I There were no metal magazines at that time that were accessible to me. Remember, I grew up
mm,
in a small town, so information was almost non-existent. I probably didn't know how many records this band had out. I was not aware. Somehow, I believe I was aware. I just have a gut feeling that I was aware that when I got that first record that they had another singer. And I'm guessing that I probably saw a video for maybe Run to the Hills or The Number of the Beast or something.
mm,
And I was able to put two and two together that this isn't the same guy that's on the cassette that I had. And I don't even think the cassette that I had for the self-titled album for the first record, I don't think it had any information on the inside. This is the days when you
mm.
could get a cassette and all it was just maybe it had the song titles on the inside of the J card.
Yeah.
So I don't think I was even aware of what anybody's names were at that point. As crazy as that sounds, but I do remember getting Number of the Beast and not being completely shocked, like, wait a minute, this isn't the same guy that was on the first record. So I was tipped off to it somehow, whether it was via a video or maybe I did
Mm,
come across a magazine, who knows. But again, very low information age, just sort of walking into this like, okay, I've got the first album, and now I walk into the store and I see a cassette for Number of the Beast. I'm buying it because I love the first record. I want more of this group. And again, we were kids at the time. I didn't fuss over like, oh, gee, I really like the guy in the first record. And I don't know, this guy's going to have to sell himself to me. I'm going to have to listen to this a lot. No, I was just like, I only got how many songs are on the first Iron Maiden record?
8 or 9 in the US. Yeah.
Okay, I had 9 Iron Maiden songs in my
Mm.
possession for probably 6 months or so, or however long I had that first album, a year or whatever. So, how many are on Number of the Beast?
8.
Okay, so now I had 17 Iron Maiden songs. That's the only thing I cared about. I didn't care who that Dennis Stratton wasn't in the band anymore. I didn't care who was who. I just wanted more Iron Maiden songs. I mentioned this on our friends with the Maiden A to Z podcast that back then I didn't care about the mix. I didn't care about who was in the band. I just wanted more Iron Maiden songs, and it was so hard to come by at that time. I took what I could get, and I just remember loving it. I got the number when I got the number of the beast. I remember putting it on and hearing that Invaders kick in, and I was just like, yeah, here we go. This is more of, yeah, this is what I want. In fact, not only is this more of what I want, it seems like they just sort of turn the dial up slightly and they're giving me more of what I want,
Mm.
like in a very quick, fast manner. Invaders, we'll talk about the songs as we go through them, but
Mm.
it just came out swinging at me. This new guy, this different singer. Wow, can this guy sing? He was,
Mm.
operatic type of voice there, huge vocal range. No problems there. I didn't have any issue like, gee, I wonder if I'm gonna like this as much as the first record. Nah. As soon as like we're probably how long does it take for Bruce's voice to come in on Invaders? 40, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, whatever it was. I was all in 45 seconds into this album, and and I loved it. Children of the Damned, the whole thing, the different stuff going on. I've always been somebody that liked catchy songs, melodic songs. This record has that all over it. There's a
Mm.
certain degree of burnout factor for me with this album, with stuff like Run to the Hills, even the title track. But man, oh man, at that time, I couldn't listen to those songs enough. I couldn't stop singing Run to the Hills. I couldn't stop singing Number of the Beast. I
Mm.
was I was all in. I love the mix. I love the record. I love the album cover. I mentioned the album cover in the introduction, and I mentioned the Satanic Panic. We had a conversation off camera, off pod about this, and in the U.S. that was a thing. So there was a certain element of what would I say? This is something I got to hide from my parents, which makes it all the more special, which makes you want to embrace it all the more. I was fully in on Ozzy and Sabbath at this point. So anything that had that sort of occult, the devil type of thing. Ozzy was full blown into this still at this point. So I was like, yeah, bring it on, because it just sort of brought it in even more closer to what I was digging about Black Sabbath and in Ozzy. And it rebellious. It made it a little bit rebellious listening to this record. I went to Catholic school, and this was not a record that you wanted to show your your not homeroom nun or something like that. It was dangerous. And the PMRC, and that was right around the corner. The Satanic Panic thing was kicking off, and Maiden was sort of in the crosshairs of that. And
Mm.
whereas with the first album, I saw if you haven't, go back and listen to our episode on the first record. I talk about how the very first time I heard Maiden was on MTV with the Live at the Rainbow. But there were no videos for the first record, or at least none that got played on MTV. I know they had a video for women in uniform and stuff like that, but I never saw any videos except for that Live at the Rainbow video. There were no sort of staged videos for
Mm.
Iron Maiden that I saw until Number of the Beast with Run to the Hills and the title track. And those got played like mad on MTV. So it kind of felt like, it's interesting you mentioned Bruce was your guy because you heard Bruce first, but Bruce was my guy because I kind of felt like I was there. I was kind of like, all right,
Mm.
I wasn't there when Paul was in the band. I didn't discover them. I wasn't following them from the first album. I kind of came in late with Paul. It was like I discovered them, and all of a sudden Paul's gone. That's what it felt like.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I felt like, okay, I'm on board for this, the new guy. I'm on board with this new guy, and this is going to be my band. And now I'm here with this album, moving forward with this band. I'm here. This is my band. I don't know anybody else that likes this band, but I'm all in. I would eventually discover some friends that did like Iron Maiden, and it kind of felt like we were in some sort of special club or something
mm,
because nobody, they weren't getting played on the radio. You could see them on MTV, but they were not getting played on the radio. They were not a
mm,
band that you just sort of heard random kids discussing. I can remember I mentioned this in our first album episode that I was playing bass at the time, and there were some kids at my school. I can remember exactly where I was. We were walking to the downtown area from my high school, and some kids, were, "Hey, I heard that you like Iron Maiden," and these are some older kids. They were 2 years older than me, and they were in Iron Maiden. It was like, yeah, I'm in Iron Maiden too. Wow, and it was kind of like, and it was even cooler because they were older than me, and they were kind of like, normally the older kids in high school don't talk to the younger kids, but they were like, okay, we heard you're in Iron Maiden. You're in, you're in the club. You're cool. So I had these couple of older kids that were really in the Maiden, and I would, hang it, talk to them, and we sort of had this sort of connection. So I've always loved Number of the Beast. There's a certain degree of burnout factor for me with this record, but I'm not going to deny that I like to talk about this all the time. If I'm at a show somewhere, concert somewhere, and Number of the Beast comes on, the PA system between bands, everybody's singing along, everybody's fist is in the air.
mm,
The album is a metal classic. Like I mentioned in the intro, it shows up at number one on many people's polls, internet polls, and stuff like that. Who can argue with that? It's a metal classic. It's a landmark album. It's a special record for me because it felt like, okay, here I am at the beginning of this new phase with the band. And it did kind of feel like a new phase. I was able to notice the difference between this and the first album. As I
mm,
mentioned before, I didn't get Killers till a little bit later. And I was able to notice like, okay, this is like, yeah, this sounds, it sounds different. I probably couldn't put
mm,
it into words at the time. The production was better. It seemed like it was just everything I liked about the first record, but taken to another level. So
mm.
classic album.
I think it's a standard for classic albums as a classic album. It's that classic.
Exactly.
But
Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I was thinking about the we didn't really talk about getting out of the band or why he was forced out of the band. So maybe we should
Yeah.
bring that cliffhanger in now before we start to talk more about Bruce getting into Maiden. So this has been discussed many times, of course, why Paul Di'Anno was forced to leave, or did he even want to leave himself? Paul, in later day interviews, have said that he did not really enjoy touring the way that Maiden toured that much. He didn't. It wasn't his thing, so to speak, and he didn't take care of himself either. For being the lead singer, you should be a bit cautious, take care of your voice when you travel, and touring life is hard for anyone, but especially for the singer, it's hard to pull that off doing gigs day after day. So Paul had said that maybe he felt a bit of a relief when they asked him to leave because he was sacked of the band. He didn't leave himself, but maybe he welcomed the decision that was made. So to get things into some sort of chronology here, Paul's last gig was they did a short postponed tour of Scandinavia. And the last gig was in Copenhagen, in Denmark, on the 10th of September. He was told that he was to leave the band on the 13th, just a few days after the tour. And it was officially announced, I guess in some music magazine or something, on the 26th of September. By then, Bruce was more or less already in the band. And it's a famous story that's been told many times that Steve had his sort of eye on Bruce since they had done gigs with Samson. And as we have talked about already many times, the small circles of people and the music scene of London, people, of course, knew of each other. And so Steve was very keen to get Bruce, as he really liked his voice. And Samson did a very prestigious gig on the Reading Festival of 1981. And Rod and Steve went to Reading to see him on stage and was impressed. Rod Smallwood, after the gig, talked to Bruce about, hey, would you be interested in joining the band? And this was in August, like I said, of 81. So that's before they have told Paul Di'Anno to leave the band. And Bruce was... He sort of knew this from before, because there were rumors going around that Maiden wanted Bruce as their new singer because Paul was getting sacked. So Bruce knew about this, and he was quite confident that he should get the gig, and why. So he was told Rod that when I'm in the band, you should know this and that. So he was very sort of affirmative that I'm not Paul Di'Anno, I'm myself. So if you want my voice, you get the whole package, so to speak. And the thing was that I think Bruce was impressed by Iron Maiden. He liked Iron Maiden from before, but I think we should add also that the management and the financial states and business side of Samson was less to their advantage. And by this time, the former Maiden drummer, Thunderstick, who we talked about in previous episodes, he had already left the band. So they had a new guy on drums. And the gig on the Reading Festival was a big gig. And it came out later that, I mean, big, proper record labels were there to check them out. And they were offered, Samson were offered like proper big deals for a new record deal. But of course, when their lead singer went, the offers went as well. So I think it ended up pretty well for Samson too, because their singer, Nicky Moore, that got in after is, or was rather, he's dead now, unfortunately. Nicky Moore was a perfect singer for Samson and a great singer, great singer. So if you haven't heard those Samson albums put out after Bruce's departure, do check them out. It's a more blues-based rock. It's not that wild mix of blues and theatrics that were Samson at the time when Bruce and Thunderstick was still in the band. But I think they're very well worth checking out. I really like those albums with Nicky Moore on vocals. Anyway, so you can find what's called the Bruce audition tapes. You can find it on YouTube and listen to yourself. What that is that you can hear Bruce singing over the backing tracks to Paul Di'Anno songs. And those songs were Killers, Rothschild, Twilight Zone, and the live version of Remember Tomorrow. And these were supposedly recorded in Battery Studios, where the album was recorded by Martin Birchlater on the 19th of September. And he got the job that very same day after they thought successfully that he had managed to do his audition singing over these backing tracks. Bruce was in the band, and I think they started to rehearse and more or less write new songs straight away. Bruce made his debut gig with the band. They arranged a short tour of Italy, and on the 26th of October, Bruce was on stage with Iron Maiden for the first time in Bologna in Italy. And then they went back to London and continued to write songs and prepare for the recording of this very album, The Number of the Beast. And the album was recorded between early December, and the final mix of the album was done by the 14th of February of 1982. So, yeah. What do you want to talk about now? John?
Well, I just like to comment that the transition, I think, from Paul to Bruce, I like Paul Diano, and
Mm,
I have friends that feel Iron Maiden was never the same after Paul left. But the difference for me between Paul and Bruce, I think Paul was at his strengths in smaller settings, up close,
mm,
personal, pubs, sweaty, in your face, that kind of thing. That's where
yeah.
I always felt Paul shined. Now, I've never heard Paul singing with Iron Maiden in an arena, so I'm sure it would have translated there too. But I've always felt like Bruce is a classic example of an arena singer. He's a stadium singer. He's a guy that can get in front of 20,000 people and sing to that person in the back of the room. He has that kind of voice. His mannerisms on stage are sort of designed to be large. His movements, the way he runs around, his stage presence is kind of designed for a big stage type of thing. So
Oh
I
yeah.
always
Oh yeah.
felt like Bruce is it. He was the person to take the band to that level, to take them to the arena level. He also has a voice that he has more vocal range than Paul does. So that, as I mentioned in the intro, I think gave Steve options. He was able to do, like, for instance, the opening track, Invaders. I could kind of hear Paul singing the verse in that. Longos have incited as the ever, that kind of spitting out a lot of words really quick. There isn't a whole lot of movement at times in that melody line. There are times where Bruce jumps up, but there's moments in the melody line of the verse for that where I could hear Paul kind of spitting out those kind of lyrics. But Bruce does it just as well. So he can do that kind of thing, yet he can do the run to the hills way up high in the vocal range
Mm,
type of thing. I also think Bruce has, whereas Paul has a sort of grit and gravel to his voice. Paul has more of a cleaner tenor, high tenor. I keep using the word operatic because he can sing that sort of mouth wide open, throat wide open, tons of sound coming out of his mouth. His nickname,
mm,
the air raid siren, there's a reason for
mm,
that because he's loud, strong, powerful, high notes. And I think that maybe too helped this slightly cleaner voice that Bruce has maybe help the band move into a slightly more attention to them, a
mm,
wider audience. I think maybe it helped bring in a wider audience with that. Also factor in that Adrian is firmly into the band at this point. He's
mm,
entrenched in the band, so his songwriting is starting to come out. Bruce, very, very strong songwriter. As we mentioned in the intro, rumors have it that he was involved in various aspects of the songwriting on Number of the Beast, but was unable to be credited. So when
mm.
you bring all these things coming together, now the band is really starting to pick up momentum and they're starting to, for me, this is kind of the turning point for the band. They start picking up speed here and they're really going to start they continue to propel forward for the next couple a couple records. They just keep
Mm.
going from strength to strength. They keep getting more popular. They keep playing to bigger crowds. Their name just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And to me, this is really it really starts right at the first album with them. But to me, this is where it's really like it sort of kicks into another gear and they're really
Mm.
starting to cruise here, starting to pick up speed. So yeah, I think that
Mm.
it can't be understated how anytime there's a singer change, it's important to the band. It can affect the band in a positive or a negative way. But this is, I think, really kicks Iron Maiden into another level with the introduction of Bruce. So,
Yeah, I mean, taking into consideration, they Steve has said that he wasn't. It it wasn't like he wanted to get rid of Paul. I think the band pretty much was satisfied with Paul as a singer. That wasn't the case. It was his reliability, that he was, messing up shows, party too hard, stuff like that. So I think, or I know that they had a discussion with Rod, of course, the manager, but they also talked to Martin Birch, the producer, who they knew was going to make the new album. And they both agreed that you can't wait and give Paul Di'Anno another album and then we see how it goes. If you feel like this now, do the change now.
Yeah.
Because if you kick off even more, getting changing the vocalist after a few more records, that's a bad thing. So if you think like this now, do the change now. So, and you mentioned the air raid siren, and the backstory to that is quite funny. It's not like Bruce himself called himself the air raid siren, but on the album he get that nickname, and that comes from a letter to the British rock magazine Kerrang, and someone who had seen the debut gig of Bruce was in London, in England, was on the 11th of November, the Rainbow Theatre, and someone wrote a letter to Kerrang that said something like he thought that Bruce sounded like an air raid siren mixed through a concrete mixer. So I mean that wasn't.
It wasn't a compliment in the beginning.
Nah, not really, was it? But it's quite funny. Another thing that we should mention now before we start to talk about the songs and so on is that Bruce wasn't actually the first vocalist to be tried out on audition for Iron Maiden at this point. The story is that Steve was a huge fan of a British band called Beckett. And Beckett recorded just one album in 1974. And Beckett is the name that we will return to in this episode and also in future episodes. But for now, I will say that their singer, Terry Slessor, was tried out, I think just because Steve wanted to. And they did one audition, and both parties, the band, Steve, and of course Terry himself, sort of realized that his voice didn't match Iron Maiden at all. And if you dig out the album Beckett from 1974 and hear his vocals there, it's like it's not the type of singer that Iron Maiden needed.
Yeah.
But still a good singer. He actually replaced Brian Johnson in Geordie when he joined AC/DC.
Wow.
And I think they're still doing gigs like Geordie with Terry Slessor on vocals.
Wow. Also, I have some memory of Steve at some point or somebody in the band saying that when Bruce came in, it was kind of like Bruce would sing something, and it was like, oh wow, he can do that. Well, let's see if he can do this. And it was sort of like, all right, oh wow, he did it. Well, now let's see if he can do this. It was sort of like, wow, like this guy, discovering all the things that Bruce could do, and it was probably, I would imagine, a feeling from the songwriters, from Steve and everybody else writing songs, like, yeah, we can get this guy to do things that are kind of crazy. He's got a vocal range. It's just nuts. And he can do all this stuff with his voice. Let's kind of like, you have this new instrument or something and you're testing it out to see what the potential of the things you can do with this instrument. And I think that was sort of the case with Bruce, but okay, shall we jump into let's jump into the album. So the album opens with Invaders, and this is funny. Again, going back to my youth, you don't. This is before the internet, and you're just happy to have whatever songs you have. I've always loved Invaders, and it wasn't until man, deep into the internet where I started realizing like, whoa, there's a lot of people that don't like Invaders. And I never, I sort of understand why. I think maybe it's because of the chorus. The chorus has this kind of strange Vaders, doo, 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 fighting invaders. I really think it's that specific part of it, the invaders. Yeah, the way he sings that line. But for me, man, I've just always loved the energy of this. I love the way it just comes right out of the gate at you. That ba-da-da-da, ba-ba, boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Steve's fills there are awesome. Again, when I heard that for the first time, I was like, yeah. It was like, here's the bass just like jumping right at you 2 seconds into it, and you've got a bass fill right in your face, you know? And then when the thing kicks in with the do ba doo doo da da doo da 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 doo 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 da da, I think that that's just so cool. It's so like locked in the pocket type of thing. And the lyrics are awesome. You know, it's got sort of a classic metal trope, Vikings and everything. Longboats have been sighted and the evidence of war has begun. You know, and the way Bruce is spitting out these lyrics is just fantastic. I do get the chorus, but I love it. I love the axes grind and maces clash as wounded fighters fall to the ground. You know, it's just
Mm.
12-year-old, 13-year-old me was just like, yeah, this is awesome. And again, this is back then we weren't all burnt out on listening to people sing about Vikings. You know, today it's like a metal band, a traditional metal band singing about Vikings. You're like, oh man, are you kidding me? It's like this subject has been pounded into the dirt. But back then it was like, yeah, Vikings, swords, maces. Yes, this is awesome. And I wasn't getting that from Black Sabbath. I wasn't getting that from AC/DC. Even Judas Priest doesn't really sing, at least 80s Judas Priest wasn't singing about stuff like this. So this was I just loved it. All the little changes in the song. Da-da-da-doo, 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 you know, all that stuff.
Mm.
I think it's great. I love it. I think it's a great album opener. I feel bad that there's so many people that just think this is just like an atrocious song that should. I mean, just today as I was revisiting Total Eclipse, which we're going to discuss once we get through all the songs on the North American and European version. I was
Mm.
just reading comments and I was shocked how many people were like, they should have put this in place of Invaders. Invaders is just an atrocious song. Invaders
Mm.
drags this album down. Invaders is terrible. And even the band themselves kind of feel like Invaders is sort of half baked. I read a quote from Steve where he
Mm.
was like, yeah, you know, it was just, I've always felt like the song was never quite up to snuff or something like that, but which is
Mm.
bizarre that they would put it as the opening of the album if they were kind of feeling like it was rushed or
Mm.
not all together. But I love it. I think it's
Yeah.
great. I can't picture this album opening any other way. Again, maybe it's because as a 12 or 13-year-old hearing this, it's stuck in my brain because I heard it at such a young age, but I love it, and
Mm.
I'll always go to bat for defenders, invaders. What do I say? Defenders, invaders. I had Judas Priest in my mind there. Invaders.
Yeah, I'm also a huge fan of Invaders, and uh, it's funny you mentioned this with the intro song. I think I've read somewhere an interview with Nick Anderson of Entombed Helicopters fame, and apparently he always thought that Number of the Beast, that it was the other way around, that Number of the Beast was the opening song for the album with the spoken intro and everything. So they also there must be something wrong here, something like that. And I can sort of get that too. Number of the Beast would be a great opening song too, of
Yeah.
course. But Invaders was indeed, according to Luis Mariano Rodriguez, he says that Invaders was the last song to be written for the album and designed specifically to be the opening song of the album. This is, of course, the only opening song of an album that have been played live, which is
Interesting.
kind of weird. They used Murders in the Rue Morgue as the opening song for the Beast on the Road tour. Um, but just like you, I'm a huge fan of this song, and I I know that the people I've talked to, Maiden fans, whenever you talk about Invaders, and they say it's not that good, and they always say, well, the chorus, I mean, do 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 do. They think that
Yeah.
is bordering on being a bit silly, even, or something like that. But I don't know. I just like this, and I especially like the. It's like Clive Burr's drumming is the way he drums is like it's made for a song like this. It's just propelling the song forward with so much energy and force. It's I just love this. And you mentioned the mix of the album with the bass very very loud. It's not overly loud, but it's very very present in the mix without taking anything away from guitars or vocals or drums or anything else. But I mean, it's just so in that way, I think the mix for Number of the Beast is more or less perfect. Actually, it sounds so good, and it's sound wise, it's very close to Killers. I think the drum sound is it's recorded in the same studio, mixed in the same studio, Battery Studio that is in London. So I think that. I think it's a great opening song. I love Invaders.
For sure. Next, Children of the Damned. And this is a nice change of feel. You get the immediacy of Invaders coming right out at you. And then you get those acoustic guitars at still to this day, especially at that time, I loved anything that had sort of like a picking, strumming type of acoustic guitar thing, giving it that sort of pseudo classical like vibe to it. So I loved it. The way Bruce sings in the verse, the way he's almost kind of speaking. There's a melody line there, but he's not pushing his voice or anything. It's kind of in the lower range of his voice. And then when that chorus kicks in, I mean, this is talk about like Bruce playing to his strengths here. When he belts out that "Children of the Damned," I mean, that is
Mm,
just yeah, I remember hearing that and being like, yeah, this is powerful.
mm,
Whereas Paul had sort of the power in his lower voice when he was like, murder's in the room, morgue, that kind of thing where he was sort of barking out and that was where his rat child, that kind of thing
mm,
was Paul's power. This was like Bruce's singing. It's such a great use of dynamics here. And if you're out there, I to prep for this, I listened to an early CD version of it that you had sent me, Matthias. I believe it's the UK versions, the first like versions of this on
mm,
CD, where there's just a lot of dynamics in it. And man,
mm,
you got that nice, mellow, quiet, kind of laid back too. The drums are really, I won't say jazzy, but they're very like just sort of very laid back. And then that chorus kicks in and the big power chords and Bruce just on the top there
mm,
belting out that note. I mean, if that is if you were somebody that maybe had been following them from the beginning and you weren't quite sure about this guy with Invaders, you were like, okay, yeah, maybe. And then you hear the chorus in this song. I mean, it's just like, all right, this guy, he's delivering the goods here. He has he's got the power here. I mean, this is sort of the definition of like a power singer.
mm,
This just belting out those high notes like that. And then the way it sort of breaks down. Now he's burning his hands. He's starting to laugh. Da-da-da-da. Says his name, and the guitar solo comes in. Oh man, just like yeah, it's just great. This is a great guitar solo. The way this whole song builds and the way it ends. Children of the Town. It's just amazing, and it's most people wouldn't. And this thought just came to me that most people wouldn't list this as an epic Iron Maiden song. When you think
no,
of the epic
I
Iron
guess
Maiden
not.
songs, you think of
Mm,
Phantom of the Opera, Hallowed Be Thy Name, Rime of the Ancient
mm,
Mariner. But this kind of has those elements to it. You've got the tempo changes, you got the dynamic changes, you got that big, super dramatic ending. It's just a very well written song. It doesn't feel forced. There's nothing in the song that feels forced. To me, this is Steve Harris. Like Steve Harris is, I mean, he started coming into his own on Killers,
mm,
but this to me is him really landing. Like he's drawing aces on every song. Is everything he's doing at this point is just right on the money. He's at the peak of his powers. He's peaking right when Bruce comes into the band or hitting his stride. Let's put it down. I don't think he's
Mm,
peaking because he's still right for the next couple records. He's on a roll, but he's really
mm,
hitting his stride here on this record. And this song is a great example of it. There's nothing in it that feels like it overstays its welcome. All the section changes make sense. There's nothing that feels like it was shoehorned in, like, oh, we just want to put this kind of weird riff in here just to do it because we like sort of pseudo proggy type of thing. No, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like just a very, very well written song that builds in intensity until you get to that last children of that last moment in
mm,
the song, that big Bruce's big scream at the end there. Fantastically written song. Uh,
mm,
just a great song that shows off everything that's great, really, about Iron Maiden, all the different things that they could do. They're not a one trick band. They're not just play, they can play fast. They just hit us between the eyes with Invaders. But here they're showing us that they can do these different things. They can get quiet, they can get big, they can do all these different things. And it's just a great song. It sits really well in the record following Invaders. I like records that have ups and downs in the sense of
mm,
dynamics in songwriting, not in song quality. So this here, you get this invaders coming at you fast and hard, children of the dam bringing it down and taking you on a journey. And this was a popular thing. I think even I've heard Bruce say this that at this time, children of the sea, children of the grave. So this was
mm,
something that, yeah, at that time I was very into Maiden and when I was very into Black Sabbath and everything. So this was like, yeah, okay, yeah, Children of the Sea. This is Children of the Damned. I remember thinking like it had that
mm,
reminded me of the title thing. I liked that imagery, the Children of the Sea, the Children of the Grave, the Children of the Damned, type
mm.
of thing. So yeah, fantastic song, 10 out of 10.
Definitely, it's one of my favorite songs by the band. Uh, and I think that now is the time to talk about hidden credits.
Uh-oh.
We've done that in every episode so far.
You're gonna ruin my mood. You're gonna ruin my feeling on this song. Don't tell me that this song was completely written by somebody else.
No,
Don't
it
ruin it
wasn't.
for me.
So I will enhance the song for you by telling you this. So anyway, back in 1996, me and my friend Henrik Johansson was starting up a webpage called the Bruce Dickinson Wellbeing Network. And this was, like I said, in 96. And uh, we managed, for some weird and strange reason, we managed to get an interview with Bruce as he was touring for the Skunkworks album. And we did this exclusive interview in his bus before the gig here in Stockholm. And we had like a bunch of questions. I mean, really nerdy stuff. And this interview is still online to be read if you're interested. I guess we can post a link in the description for you to click on.
Okay. Yep.
Anyway, we were talking about older like Maiden things, and Bruce mentioned, and I think this was, if not at least one of the very first time where Bruce sort of officially admitted that he had been co-writing stuff with Iron Maiden for Number of the Beast. Like you said in the introduction to this episode, Bruce had a contract with the management of the band Samson that he was in before, and the contract said something like money earned during that period of time under the contract were first to go to the management. So at the time, Bruce was still under contract with Samson's management, and that meant that any money he would earn during that period for example, writing songs for his new band and getting royalties would be money for the management. So I guess they came up with this idea that going to Steve would be redirected for Bruce. So in this interview that we had with Bruce in 96, he started to talk about making moral contributions. And he used that phrase quite a few times. And he said, moral contributions. And he named the songs on which he had made some moral contributions. And this very phrase, moral contributions, has been referred to in other articles, which I guess they must have had from the interview that me and Henrik did in 96. So Children of the Dam being one of these songs which Bruce made moral contributions to. And there will be a few other titles as we go through the album to which he has made some moral contributions. And like you said, Bruce sort of confessed that he was indeed influenced by the Black Sabbath song Children of the Sea when he made his moral contributions to the writing of Children of the Damned. And I think in this case, we can be pretty sure that his contributions was writing lyrics and making vocal melodies. The very lyric is indeed inspired by a film with the same name from the 60s called Children of the Damned. And I think it's just like you said before, the dynamics of this song is just amazing, and the sound is fantastic. I mean, as you say, the climax of the song is that very last high note, and it's even perfect the way Bruce's voice breaks at the end. Children of the Damned. It just sort of distorts, which is just like the crowning of everything up to that point. I like the first solo by Dave, the first short solo, and the main solo is Adrian doing some sort of finger picking, not finger picking, what do you say, tapping solo, which is really, really, really good. I love Children of the Damned, and I sure hope they bring a song like this back somewhere in time on future tours.
Okay, next is The Prisoner. This is a Steve Harris and Adrian Smith co-write. It has that spoken word intro, which what's the movie or TV show that's from?
The Prisoner. It's the same
Okay,
name.
it's called The Prisoner. All right. As a kid, I had no idea what that was.
Mm.
That's not I must have been a British show or something. I had no idea what that was at the intro. I thought it was just something that they did to tie into the theme of the song. I like the start stop guitar thing, da 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 da, because I kind of like things that have a little bit of a bounce to them. I'm not going to use the word funky because the word funky and Iron Maiden just kind of don't seem to mix very well.
No.
Yeah. I don't want to say I don't like this song because I do like the song. I think the chorus is really great. But if I'm ranking the songs on this record, I'm going to have Children of the Damned above it. Children of the
Yeah.
Damned to me is a solid gold 10 out of 10. Should be studied in heavy metal schools for kids to learn how to write great songs. The Prisoner to me is cool. It's got a cool riff. I do like the chorus. It maybe doesn't have that special element that Children of the Damned has and that some of the later songs are going to have. But again, I do like it. Maybe the chorus for me is a little too uplifting. I'm not a
Mm.
number. I'm a free man, and I'm
Mm.
there where I want. It's a little too light for me. Now I prefer, and then people are going to say, "Wait a minute! You just two songs back, you were okay with the Invaders chorus, and now you're complaining about this chorus." Well, I don't know. I just think that this one is a little too. There's like this lifting quality to the chorus in this song that makes it sound a little light to me or something. And because of that, I have to deduct a half a point from this song. I might, and again, I don't want people to misunderstand me to think that I don't like this song, but if you force my hand into ranking the songs on the record, I'd have to take a half a point or a point off for this chorus. For me, it's melodic, and here I am contradicting myself again. I say this all the time that I like super melodic choruses and everything, but there's just something about it that just is a little too airy, a little too uplifting, light for me. But as it stands, I like the drum intro. The drums sound really great on this record. Martin
Mm.
Birch, I forgot to mention Martin produces the record in the opening credits, but we've mentioned it here as we've been talking. I think the drums sound great on this record. So, all right, that's where I stand with The Prisoner.
Yeah, The Prisoner is another one with the moral contributions made by Bruce. And I mean, if you there's this classic album series that were made available on DVD a few years back, and Bruce in that classic album DVD for Number of the Beast actually goes to the place of Port Meiron, which is a place in Wales, where the TV show The Prisoner was recorded, or filmed rather, I should say. In I think the show was from 67, 68, and there was like you said, a British thing. I think it was shown on US TV too, but I think that the British audience has a fonder place of the TV series. It was the TV series The Prisoner were made and created by a movie star called Patrick McGowan, who was, for example, he was the warden in the Escape from Alcatraz, the Clint Eastwood movie. And the show was run a few times on British television, and Bruce have said himself that he very much related to this, the prisoner, number 6, as he's called in the series, because he was angry all the time, and Bruce was sort of an angry young man, and he that just rebelled against everything. So the plot for the TV series is quite funny. It's about a special agent, a secret agent that's leaving his day job as an agent. He resigns, gets home, and gets sort of sedated, wakes up in the village, which is, of course, a prison that you can't escape from. And the village is filled with other agents, double agents, even triple agents. And everyone there, some are fine being there, some are trying to escape. And our prisoner, the main character, number 6, Patrick McGowan, is indeed trying to escape the village in more or less every episode. And trying to, while he's making his plans, he is interrogated by number 2. And as you can all hear in the intro to the song, which they had to gain personal permission by Patrick McGowan, because he was the creator of the show. So they had to ask, Rod Smallwood made this phone call to ask for permission to use it, and he said, "Do it," famously. And in the intro, I think we should say that every intro to the show had a different voiceover. So there was always a different number 2, meaning the investigator. And in this very episode, number 2 is who is heard in the intro of the song as well, is an actor called Eric Portman, and Patrick McGowan is number 6. And this is from the 4th episode called Free for All. I really like this TV show. I strongly recommend you take a look at it. It's very 60s sort of science fiction, but Cold War. But it's a weird mix of things, which is quite unique, I think. And at that time must have stood out very much among other TV shows. The lyric itself that Bruce had his moral contributions to, um, isn't that much about the very TV show. It's more or less about wanting to break free of something. Um, there is another song on Power Slave that we will talk about in future episodes called Back in the Village. And that song is very much more filled with actual references to the TV show than the actual song The Prisoner is. The basic idea for this song came from Adrian, and the intro supposedly came to life with Bruce Dickinson behind the drum kit. So,
Oh.
and apparently Clive just more or less copied what Bruce showed him. And I mean, you can hear that it's not very hard to drum that if you are a okay drummer, but it's very effective. And it's interesting that you don't really get off on this song. And I would even suggest, a bit tongue in cheek, but could this be the first AOR Maiden song?
Yeah,
Maybe.
maybe. And you sort of hear this is Adrian's specialty, these kind of
Yeah.
melodic choruses. To me, yeah, it's very Adrian, this chorus. I'm guessing that maybe yeah, that sounds like a very Adrian chorus to me. He likes those very melodic, major key sounding choruses.
There was even it was suggested to be released as a single, but then as a single to the VHS that they recorded at Hammersmith Odeon, that was never released until many years later. So when the VHS release got not happening, the single release of The Prisoner didn't happen either. So, but this is a song that I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan, but I really like it still. I don't think it's like the worst song of the album, but it's. I think it's a good song, but it's not my favorite on the album. It's not, but a really good song nonetheless.
Okay, next is 22 Acacia Avenue, the continuing saga of Charlotte the Harlot. Steve Harris, another Steve Harris and Adrian Smith co-write. Okay, I'm gonna probably ruffle some feathers here. I don't like this song. I never really liked this song. I wouldn't go so far as to say anything like I hate it, but if I rank the songs on this record, this would be at the bottom. Now there's people out there screaming, "What about Gangland?" We'll get to Gangland soon. Uh, I first of all, I don't like that it's like sort of this continuation of Charlotte the Harlot, a subject matter that I didn't find particularly interesting. Uh, I also don't really like, how should I say this? I don't like Iron Maiden singing about stuff like this. It just doesn't appeal to me. Back then, I got my fill of this kind of stuff with AC/DC. Bon Scott, he was the master of singing about dirty women and stuff like that. I just don't like it. I think the song too is too repetitive. It's too like if you're waiting for a when it kicks into the whole like boom, boom, da, 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 someday when you reach the age of 40. I like that riff. I like the guitar solos in it, but the song is just too repetitive. It's basically E minor, C, D, which is trademarked Iron Maiden chord progression. But it's just like it's too repetitive for me. I don't like these lyrics. I don't like the whole beat her, mistreat her, like all that kind of stuff. It just never sat well with me. I know a lot of people feel like this is some kind of epic song, like it could have been, it's like an epic, like Hallowed be thy name. But it doesn't have the it's just harmonically very repetitive. It's just basically E minor, C, D for the majority of the song. There just isn't a lot going on here. It's a little too long for me. And it's just not a subject that I felt like deserved. I mean, I thought Charlotte the Harlot was okay, but I didn't feel it deserved a part two. I guess that's what if they had written Phantom of the Opera Part Two, The Phantom Returns, or something like that, I'd be all in
Mm,
on it. But it was like, do I need a part two? And by the way, my cassette copy never said the continuing saga of Charlotte the Harlot. I'm I'm sure I pieced it together because they say the word Charlotte in here, so I made the
mm,
connection to Charlotte the Harlot. But I don't know. It's just it hasn't aged particularly well for me. It's if we may had a topic of like songs that a lot of Maiden fans like that I don't like, this would probably be in my list because I know a lot of people really like this song. But as it stands, it's just too long, and I just don't like the subject matter. It just doesn't do anything for me. And it kind of is a disappointing end to side one of the album for me. Tell me why I'm
mm.
wrong.
I don't do that. I think it's a great song. I like it, but I mean, being a kid, I didn't really think about the lyrics at all. To me, what they sang about was little to none interest, I think. It wasn't until I got a bit older I started to get into and actually reading lyrics and finding out what that was about.
Well, I'll
And
tell you
when
something
it came,
funny. Let me tell you something
yeah, yeah.
funny though before you move on, because as a kid, I had no idea what a harlot was. Okay, that must
Mm,
be more of a British term for a prostitute. I had no idea what a harlot was. And to me, in my mind, I was thinking a harlot was something to do with like maybe like a girl, like a Victorian girl in one of those big dresses or something like that. Like seriously. And so
yeah.
I didn't understand like the beat her, mistreat her. Like it made no sense to me. And so the whole harlot thing with this to me felt like, what is this? Like you're even as a kid who normally didn't, who listened to AC/DC and all those kind of dirty, immature lyrics. But there was something about this that was like felt like, this is like, what are they singing about? Like beating up on a girl?
Mm,
That's what this song was to me. It was beating up. This is the beating up on a girl song, abusing a girl. Because I didn't know
yeah,
what a
yeah,
harlot was. I thought a harlot, in
yeah.
my mind, I thought a harlot, because it sounded like something that was like, oh, maybe that's like, a Victorian woman. These guys are British, the girl
Mm,
with the big gowns and the hair and everything. So I didn't get it. I didn't get Charlotte the harlot. I didn't get, I sort of got Charlotte the Harlot that they were sort of implying like you're paying her, but I still didn't get it. And so that's
mm,
probably also why the lyrics don't, at the time, I didn't understand it. It felt weird, uncomfortable to me, the whole like abusing this woman. It still doesn't feel right, even if I understand that she's a prostitute. It still doesn't feel right that you're talking about beating her and everything like that. But at the time, it really confused me. And I think that that added to the fact that I couldn't relate to this. I could relate to axes grinding and maces clashing as a 12-year-old. I don't know why, but that
yeah,
I
yeah,
could understand that better than I
yeah,
could understand what was going on with here. And there was just a lot of like, I just didn't get it. But okay, sorry. So go ahead, go on, carry on.
yeah. So carry on. Okay, so when I started to get into lyrics, when I was when did I start to read the lyrics? I think maybe when Somewhere in Time came out, I got a small dictionary, Swedish, English, and started to translate the lyrics to try to find out what they were singing about. And at that time, there were so many songs that had like great lyrical content. So for me, this song was like nothing special. I found out what a harlot was by looking it up in this dictionary. Uh, but speaking of the lyrics, I think the lyrics for this song is very it's slightly uncomfortable, and also adding to the confusion about the lyric is that it's very schizophrenic. Because I mean, like you said, beat her, mistreat her, she will make her go down on her knees and stuff. I mean, it's pretty brutal. But then the very last verse of the song is like, I must save you from this.
Yeah.
Is it the same protagonist or is it a different? Is the first half of the song the what you call the guy that goes to prostitutes? I'm sure there's a name for that, but I mean the punter or whatever the word is
Uh,
that goes to prostitutes. Is that one character, and then is there another character for the last verse of the song, the one that goes, "This is no life for you. Stop all that screwing." uh, that try to rescue Charlotte from this bad life. Uh, maybe it is. It's not super clear, but lyrics aside, I really like 22 Acacia Avenue. It's like you say, it's an Adrian song. It was originally the first part of the song came from a song by Adrian's earlier band, Urchin. At that time, it was called Countdown. And for anyone with internet, you can go on YouTube and search Urchin Countdown, and you can hear the version that was eventually turned into 22 Acacia Avenue. The funny thing is with the story about how this song came about is that apparently Steve and Adrian didn't know of each other. I guess since Adrian was a childhood friend of Dave, they must have known of each other perhaps. But anyway, Steve is seeing a show by Urchin, and the song Countdown is a song that he liked. And fast forward a few years, they are starting to write songs for Number of the Beast. And Steve says to Adrian, "I remember this song." And he starts to hum the song to Adrian that you used to do with Urchin. That's good. Can we use that? Is that something we can do something with? So apparently, Steve just remembered this song after all these years, much to the amazement of Adrian Smith, and suggested that maybe this is something we can use for Iron Maiden. And of course they did. What I like about this song, I like the riffs. I like the different parts. You think it's a bit long. I have never thought about it that way, but I mean it's on the longer side for a rock song, but at the same time it goes through these different movements, so it just doesn't feel like a song that just repeats stuff over and over again. It's to me it stays fresh all the way through. And I absolutely love the solos in the song. I love when Dave,
yeah,
who is the first guy, when Dave plays the slow melodic
yeah,
stuff, and Adrian does the more energetic, high performance sort of solo. I liked that very much, and they do that in this very song. So maybe because of that, I really like 22 Acacia Avenue. And I don't know what to say more. I think we talked enough about 22
yeah.
Acacia Avenue.
I'm glad you brought up. Go
It
ahead.
is a weird song. I can agree with that, but I don't think it's a bad song. It's just that the lyrics were a bit tasteless back then, and they're even more tasteless in 2025. But well.
Yeah. And I'll give you the guitar solos. The guitar solos in the song are great. And I could have looked past the lyrics if for me there's just not enough harmonically going on in that song. But all right, let's move on to side two. Side two opens up with one of the biggest metal anthems of all time. I think as you're making your way through life as a metalhead, for you to earn your stripes, you have to know by heart the intro to this song, the spoken word intro. Every metalhead can recite this. It is for the longest time I thought it was Vincent Price because he has a very Vincent Price-like voice, but it's a English actor named Barry Clayton. This is the song title track, the album cover. This is what gets them in the crosshairs of the morally conservative people here in the States. So this is sort of that evil song there. But there's some burnout factor with this song for me. But there's times where this comes on at a show or I'm listening to this record and this can just hit the right spot. This is a great song. This is a metal anthem.
Mm.
The intro is spoken word intro is iconic. Bruce's intro is iconic. Bruce's insane scream, maybe one of
Mm.
the greatest metal screams of all time,
Yeah.
iconic. The chorus, fantastic. Sing along. The verses are great. Tells a great story. Even Steve squeezes in a bass solo
Mm.
during the solo section, which was all right in my book back then and today. Just love the imagery of the whole thing. Just fantastic. I love that last verse, sort of last verse there where he does that, this can't go on. I must inform the law. That's just
Mm.
great. Bruce's delivery on this is fantastic. Well, I mean, what's to say about this? It's again, it's one of those songs if you need to make a time capsule for 10,000 years from now so people can discover it on our destroyed planet about what heavy metal is, you wouldn't be doing a disservice to put Number of the Beast in that time capsule because this is sort of everything you like about metal. It's got the imagery, it's got the big chorus, it's got scary lyrics, dark-ish lyrics. It's even got a bass solo. What more could you ask for? And like I said, a little bit of a burnout factor with this, but when they play it live, I mean, it's one of those songs that it's War Pigs or it's, you know what I mean? It's just one of those songs that has just become iconic in the annals of heavy metal. So yeah, it's a solid 10 out of 10. Chisel it on the Mount Rushmore of metal. It's just a great anthemic song.
Yeah, yeah, I think you pretty much said it all. The burnout factor. Again, it's a song that I don't necessarily put on just to listen to it, but at the same time, whenever I hear it, I really like it a lot. Uh, and I mean, talking about the songwriting style and the songwriting of Steve Harris, this was another step for sure for him. And I mean, I think I read somewhere that Adrian remembered when he heard the song the first time when Steve sort of showed it to him, and Adrian thought, well, this is different. This is something. This is fresh. And was he right? Like you said, the Vincent Price beginning is indeed Barry Clayton, and the backstory is that they actually tried to get Vincent Price, but the sum of money he demanded to quote unquote even get out of bed was so high that it was like, this is just ridiculous. And then Bruce came to think about this guy, this voice actor, Barry Clayton, who used to read ghost stories on a radio show that he listened to. So Bruce said, maybe we can get that guy to the studio. So he did. He came there and he did it like 5 times, and they just picked the best one, and the rest is history. It's also a very well known story about the vocal opening of the song that Bruce had, that Martin Birch had Bruce singing those first verse over and over and over again until Bruce just lost it completely and thought, what the fuck do you want me to do? And uh, and then Martin told Bruce like the moral boost story of, it's just like when I recorded uh, Ronnie James Dio and the first lines of the song Heaven and Hell with Black Sabbath. And he thought that Ronnie just came in and did Ronnie James Dio, and he said to Ronnie that, you know, you must encapsulate your whole identity into those first lines of that song. Sing me a song, you're a singer. I don't hear that. So he kept going on for Ronnie to just do it over and over again until he nailed it. And for Bruce to hear that, as Ronnie James Dio was and still is one of Bruce's favorite singers in the world. He thought, okay, I listen to this guy and I do this until he is satisfied. Speaking of Martin Birch, the producer. So, and that's quite a sweet story, I think. And of course, the result is, like you say, it's the classic of classics. It's right up there. It's a song and it's a performance in the whole that is fantastic. And it's kind of funny when I think of it that, as I said, I don't necessarily think of this song. It's not like I go thinking, yeah, Number of the Beast, yeah, that's a great song. But every time you hear it, it's like it just clicks. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. It's fantastic. Nothing in this song is overstaying its welcome. Everything is so. There's a lot of things going on in this song, and it just keeps the energy going. And I think the tempo and the drum performance of Clive is very, very good. I mean, if you could imagine this song being played too fast, and it just would ruin the
Yeah.
song completely. Apparently, Clive in a later interview said that his most lasting memory of the recording of Number of the Beast, the album, the Number of the Beast, was Steve constantly telling Clive to slow down, Clive. You have to slow down, slow down. And when you listen to the live recordings with Clive in the band, it's like they are fast. They are
Yeah.
at times even too fast. But on Number of the Beast, this very song, the tempo is just perfect. So yeah, and great solos. It's Dave and then Adrian, and fantastic song. And the next one is quite famous too.
Yeah. Run to the Hills. Of course, they had a video for this that got a ton of airplay on MTV back at that time. Uh, there's some burnout factor in this one. I'd say the burnout factor is a little higher in this one than it is in
Mm,
for Number of the Beast for me. And it, much as I like Run to the Hills, Number of the Beast is a little bit more of the serious one out of these two sort of epics on here. Or these, these big numbers. The
mm.
chorus is very, very catchy. I forget where I was in a bar somewhere where somebody had this come on the jukebox, and I don't know if it was like there were a lot of metalheads in the bar. There was probably a show somewhere else that night or something, and this comes over the jukebox, and just everybody is singing along with it. If you talk to them outside in private, they probably, oh yeah, I don't like that song. It's not heavy enough. You hear sometimes people sort of dump on this song a little bit, but get a couple beers and get a room full of metalheads and flowing beer, and then turn this on the jukebox, and everybody's going to sing along. I mean, it's one of those you want to sing along with the chorus type thing. The
Yeah.
drum intro is also one of those. If you were a metalhead and you got to sit behind your friend's drum set, yeah, you tried to play this intro. It's one of those recognizable, type of things. Uh, I like it a lot when it kicks into the gallop, classic Iron Maiden gallop here. Maybe we're
Mm.
foreshadowing the Trooper a little bit with riding through dust clouds and barren wastes. It's sort of got that same Trooper vibe, galloping hard on the plains. I mean, there you go. That's Iron Maiden. It's even got the word galloping in this song.
It does.
Uh,
It does.
yeah, it's a fun song. This is a fun song, even though the subject matter is kind of violent. The chorus lends itself to just being fun. It's
Mm.
a throw your fist in the air, sing at the top of your lungs type of chorus. Burnout factor certainly involved at this stage of my life in 2025, but the 13-year-old me couldn't get enough of it. The video is iconic for its slight slapstick nature to some of it. The sort of and it sort of plays into the fact that I think even though the subject matter is battles and wars and stuff like that, because of the chorus, I think it has this fun nature to it, which is cool because the Number of the Beast is a little bit more intense. There really isn't anything fun on this record till we get to this point. Everything else is pretty serious. It is serious
Mm.
up to this point. So to have a little bit of levity, to have a little bit of fun, uh, Yeah, it's cool. It's okay. I'm down with it.
Mm,
It fits really well on the record. Again, some people I think dump on it a little bit because I think honestly it's because of the burnout factor. But it's a great, great chorus and it's a fun song. And yeah, is it a song that I come home at the end of the day and I want to listen to Run to the Hills? No, I almost never do that anymore. But when I'm listening to the record and it comes up, if you're in the pub and this comes up over the jukebox, you're singing along with it and you're having fun with it. When they
mm,
play it live, it's fun. Bruce again, that his elastic vocal range that just seems to have no upper limit when he does a run for your life. That whole part is just,
mm,
fantastic. Bruce, just great. You just picture Bruce with his arm waving over his head and his foot on the monitor, singing it
mm,
type of thing. So yeah, I'm gonna give it's a 10 out of 10 for the fun factor. And at this point in the record, it sits really nice. You need it. Love the chorus. Who cannot sing along with this chorus? Come on.
mm. It's definitely a burnout factor, and I would even go as far as say I think the band themselves, or at least some of the members, maybe even Bruce at times when they do have done this song, isn't. Uh, Truth be told, there are quite a few performances with Bruce more or less phoning in the verses of the song where he just more or less talks through the verses. You can't really phone in the chorus because that is very demanding. But I think there is a, even though it is like possibly the band's biggest hit, I would say, it is still a song that they don't play for every gig. So I think it's a song that maybe the band themselves is like, maybe we don't do Run to the Hills this tour. Um, as a kid, I loved this song. I thought it was just totally amazing. Another one who thought this song was like the next step and was really into it was Martin Birch, the producer. And he said in an interview when he was, the way he worked was that when the band that he was going to produce and record, he usually went to a couple of the rehearsals, just sitting in a corner, recording on a small tape recorder just for himself to listen to and evaluate and think and come up with ideas. And apparently the chorus is a 3-part harmony thing, which is, or at least was at that time for Iron Maiden, very advanced. And supposedly that was Martin Birch's work, that he constructed this 3-part harmony of Run to the Hills. You spoke about the gallop, the maiden gallop, and Steve had said that he was inspired or influenced by Heart when he came up with. So when he showed this song to the band, he described it to them as, I want the same kind of rhythm as Barracuda by Heart.
Yeah.
Great song by Heart. Even though this is a bit faster than Barracuda by Heart, but it's a great song. And Clive said in one, it must have been one of his very last interviews before he died in 2013, that he came up with a drum intro to the song, and he half jokingly, I think, but perhaps with a little grain of bitter truth in it, that he should have asked for a co-writing credit for coming up with the
Yeah.
drum part for the
It is
song.
iconic.
And
Yeah.
it is iconic. And since it's been such a huge hit, I think financially that would make quite a difference for him if he'd had a co-writing credit
Yeah.
for that song. Is there anything else to say about the song? No, I don't think so. It's a great song. It's not on my favorite Maiden song list, but I mean, if I talk to my parents, Run to the Hills is the Maiden song that they know of, at least. So I mean, it's a song that is bigger. It's a song that I think is bigger than Our Maiden. It's a song that might even be bigger than Eddie, even. But that's for a debate for another time, perhaps. But yeah, Run to the Hills, great song.
Okay, now we move on to a little bit of a controversial song on the record. Controversial in the sense that when we discuss Total Eclipse, the band made a decision what should be the B-side. They picked B-side to Run to the Hills, and they picked Total Eclipse, where they were also considering Gangland. So Gangland lands on the record, Total Eclipse lands up as a B-side, and thus sends Iron Maiden fans into disagreements and arguments for the rest of eternity. What should have been on the record. Uh, Maybe it's because I've listened to this album thousands and thousands of times, and because following Run to the Hills is always Gangland, that I can't hear it any other way. This was another song that shocked me when later on I heard people sort of dump on it like it's a bad song. It's an Adrian Smith, Clive Burr written song. In fact, there's a video that as I was prepping for this, I was watching a video of Adrian that he did about 4 years ago playing along with this song in his home
Yeah.
studio, which is really interesting. I like this song. I like the energy. I like the drum intro. I don't know if it's in that video with Adrian where he talks about Clive being sort of inspired by like Fireball by Deep Purple, Ian Pace's drum intro for that song, which makes sense. It's got that kind of vibe to it. It's got a ton of energy. I like the verses. It almost has like a little bit of a double chorus, the whole dead men tell no tales, gang, like that's the chorus. But then you get this spot, once you were glad to be free for a while. That's a great melody right there. That's almost very catchy, like a chorus, sort of. Uh, I like the energy of it. I like all the changes in it. There's like a key change towards the end. I think it's in the last verse, the knife at your throat, where it sort of goes up a step. It moves around kind of different. It's like in A, it's in E. So there's all these kind of chords, all these things moving around. I love the way it ends with Bruce in Gangland, you tell no tales. It's kind of like Invaders in the sense that it doesn't let up. The song just sort of hits you and it comes at you really fast, really hard. I like Clive's drumming on it. I've never had a problem with this song. I like this song. I like the lyrics. The chorus is really catchy. Again, I love that. I don't know what you would call it, a bridge, a B section, the whole once you were glad to be free for a while. Uh, so for me, again, it just flows really nicely. Run to the Hills has that sort of, I don't want to use the word silly, but like we mentioned it has sort of this happy, the chorus is very not so serious nature of Run to the Hills, and then you get Gangland where it comes at you really fast and hard. I just think the guitar playing is really great. It's really tight when they're riffing on those verses. So yeah,
Mm.
Gangland. I don't have a problem with Gangland. Would I put it? It's not my favorite song on the record, but it's not my least favorite song on the record either.
Gangland, yeah, what can I say? It's like we talked about before, it was the song that was meant to be the B-side to Run to the Hills, but it ended up on the album because they were kind of excited about Gangland, thought it was a great song. And just like I think I forget to mention that previously, but I think that just like Run to the Hills had moral contributions by Bruce Dickinson, Gangland is also a song that had moral contribution by Bruce Dickinson. But
Mm.
just like you said, the one credited is Clive and Adrian, and the reason behind that is the story goes that Clive and Adrian came to the rehearsal space working on songs for the album, and they started to jam a bit. And Clive sort of suggested the the drum part for Adrian to play something to, and it ended up being this song. And I really agree with you. I think Gangland is a really good song. What I think is the trick that I like the most is that Gangland does something that is quite unusual. I think it has a drum track that is really busy. I mean, really, really busy. But on top of that, you have these hanging chords da, da, da,
Yeah.
with a drum track underneath. And I think that is I think that's smart. I think that's good songwriting. It do this contrast, and when you go into the first verse it go da, 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 gets super intense. But at the same time, when you come to that midsection, like you mentioned, there was a time, do, do, do,
Yeah.
and all these the big chords are back all of a sudden again. So for me, even though, and I can say that already now, I'm a huge fan of Total Eclipse. But with that said, do I think automatically that Total Eclipse would have been a better track for Number of the Beast, the album, than Gangland? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. Maybe that is because I've heard the album like a million times and I'm just so used to it. But I don't know. For me, it works with both Gangland and it works with Total Eclipse too. I think Total Eclipse would have been a Total Eclipse as a song is a bit more different, so that song would have broadened the album a bit. But Gangland just does the trick. One thing that always annoyed me though is that it starts off. It sounds like there's a cut, an edit where the drum track starts at the very beginning of the song.
Yeah.
It sounds like someone, oh, I forgot to press record, and he
Yeah.
just had start to play. And apparently that must be in the mix because it's the same start on all versions, remastered versions throughout the years. So apparently that must be in the very mix of the song. That's kind of annoying. Another thing that Bruce told me and Henrik when we spoke to him in '96, not in the interview though, but he told us that there's a guitar solo missing in
Mhm.
Gangland. So after Adrian's solo, there are a few bars before
Yeah.
you go into the last verse that is instrumental. And of course, the intention was that, and they recorded a solo, but in the haste, it just was forgotten somehow. And when they talked about doing the first set of remasters, we sort of hoped that, okay, maybe they will do a new mix so we can hear that solo. Didn't happen. And when they did the 40 years anniversary just a few years back, I had the same hope again that maybe they will bring out that guitar solo now so we can hear that. Of course, that didn't happen. So there is a unreleased Dave Murray solo for Gangland somewhere in the vaults, but we are yet to hear it. Um, but yeah, I'm a fan of this song. I think it's great.
And the way you described it, I think is good about it. The fact that it's driven by the drums in a lot of ways, and I think because Adrian, was maybe responsible for the riffs. The riffs are a little different than typical Steve style riffs.
Mm,
So you sort of get that different flavor there. I'm guessing
mm,
that the chorus sounds like Adrian, once you were free, or whatever you will call
mm,
that section, to be
mm,
free. But the verses, I can hear that melody line being very much that sounds like a Bruce melody line.
mm,
Rouse your fortune as you walk into, that kind of thing. That
mm.
sounds very Bruce like. Uh, so yeah, I think that it does serve a nice little purpose on the record. I I would I don't think Iron Maiden would ever do this because it just doesn't seem like something Iron Maiden would do. There's other bands that have done this where they've released box sets where you get outtakes, take 1 through 3 of a particular song, or
Mm, mm,
a unfinished mix or a rough mix or things like that, a mix without the vocals, things like that. I mean, they must be sitting on that stuff, multiple takes. This is before
oh yeah,
computer editing. So
yeah.
at the minimum, you could have multiple takes of some of these songs, but I just get the vibe that I just can't really picture them doing that, releasing some sort of box set with, them. Black Sabbath has done it where they start and
Mm,
stop certain songs and things like that. I just don't
mm,
see Iron Maiden doing something like that, but who knows? Maybe maybe
we
somewhere
know
down the
we
road.
know that there are Killer's album was I think it was hmm, I might get checked on this fact, but I think that there was another mix of Killers prior to the one that ended up on the album, or if it was a mastering. Oh, I'm not sure. But I know there was another mix of Number of the Beast done a few days before, because apparently EMI or Rod or someone arranged like a listening party for some executives. And Martin Birch had been working really hard, and uh, he said himself that he was really tired. And by when he finally mixed the album, it was very, very rushed.
Hmm.
So come the day when they have this listening party, and Steve was apparently very upset that what's happened here? This doesn't sound right. Is this the final mix? So we had a word with the manager or someone at the record label and said, we demand a new mix of this album. We are not releasing this album. And Martin Birch was very happy that he got the chance to do a new mix, and that was done, like I think I said before, on the 14th of February of 1982. And so, I mean, a different mix of Number of the Beast could be a bonus thing for a box set, but just like you said, it doesn't, it's not very Maiden to do that, unfortunately. But we can only hope. Maybe one day when they retire, they start to release like stuff we've talked about earlier, like the full concert of Made in Japan, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
sure. Okay, let's move on to the last track of the record, the epic Hallowed Be Thy Name. Steve Harris penned a number. This sort of
Mm,
starts a trend here for a few albums of ending the albums with a big number. Uh, Staple of the live set for many, many years to come. It's a great song. I love the intro. I love the guitars, those harmonized guitars kind of moving down the fretboard. Steve just hitting that low E with the bell. I say this all the time on my YouTube channel and other podcasts. I must throw a bell, tolling bell into a song, and it just, gets my heart beating a little bit faster. So that just adds mood to it. The beginning of the song is in some ways, this song reminds me a little bit of Children of the Damned in that it develops itself
yeah,
as the song
yeah.
goes on. It begins to pick up momentum in a good way. It's sort of following the story, and as the story gets more intense, the music sort of reflects in that, and it builds in a very, very well written way. I think the lyrics are really engaging. You're kind of hanging on and want to follow the lyrics because it's in sort of a storytelling thing. When the whole band kicks in, somebody please tell me that I'm dreaming. I mean, that's just like,
Mm,
oh, great right there. As the guards march me out to the courtyard, somebody cries from a cell, God be with you. I mean, these are just great.
mm,
Again,
mm,
Steve just feels like on this record, I mean, we listened to our Killers episode. Both Matthias and I love Killers, but it really feels like to me like Steve really finds his zone here.
mm,
And whereas on Killers, there is some great stuff like Prodigal Son. We talked about how much we like
mm,
that song, but how it's a little bit of an outlier outside the Maiden
mm,
sound. But it really feels to me like on Number of the Beast, he has really focused in, found his sound. He's hitting his stride here. I would imagine that nothing here for Steve was forced. In other words, I'm guessing that a lot of this came out naturally for him. It
mm,
flowed. That's what it feels like. It feels like the creativity is flowing on this record. The band is dialed in. Bruce there probably adds an extra layer of freshness and excitement to the
mm.
whole thing. And it's just a very, very well written song. And let me check in how long the song is. It is 7 minutes and 8 seconds. So it's pretty long. It's not Rhyme in the Ancient Mariner long, but it's the longest song
Mm.
on the record. But again, we've said this in some of the other songs. It never feels like anything hangs around too long. There's enough different textures going on. Ba ba da 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 ba da da do ba da da ba da do ba da da ba. And the way I love the way they're the first when they first do that, they're just hitting it together, and then it goes into the drums just playing do 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 do. I'm making for those out
Mm.
there that can't see, I'm playing like 16th notes on the drums. It's just really creative, simple little things that keep your interest. They
Mm.
repeat that riff again, but there's a harmony over it this time, and it just keeps the song just builds really nice. We're just where if they did it a couple more times on that riff, you might lose them a little bit, but they
Mm.
add a little harmony, or they add a tempo
Mm.
change, or the drums are playing something different underneath it, or there's something else going on that just holds your ear through the whole thing. And I just think that that's really something that they start doing really, really well, especially on this album and Peace of Mind. And the way it ends, Bruce again, I mean, like Children of the Dam, just this big, everything sort of slows down, big epic ending. So yeah, a great, great album closer, great song. There's not a whole lot going on like with the chords. Like it's a pretty straightforward Iron Maiden E C D
Mm.
type of thing. But again, it's the creativity of the melody lines over the top, the harmonizing those lines, the tempo changes, what the drums are doing, Bruce's delivery. I mean, Bruce is so good at this. He does it in, I keep coming back to Children of the Damned. I never really thought of this till now, this connection between these two.
Mm.
But him kind of speaking at the beginning, I'm waiting and then it just,
Mm.
again, it keeps building. And eventually, he's way up in his range, just Bruce at his best here. This storytelling, Children of the Damned. I mean, it's really when you think about it. I mean, yeah, Bruce came from Samson, but he wastes no time putting his mark on the band. There's no insecurity here. And no one would expect it from Bruce. Bruce is, let's say, a confident performer. He
Mm.
knows his strengths, and he just shows up on the job here ready to go. There's no like, gee, how am I going to fit into this? Or getting his feet wet type of thing, or
Mm.
cautiously entering the band. I mean, Bruce just comes in and he just takes over and makes these songs his own. Nothing on here sounds like, and I'm sure some of these riffs and ideas were things that they were working on or Steve had in his head before this, before Bruce was in the
Mm.
band. But there's nothing on this that I hear and I'm kind of like, oh man, that sounds like something that they wrote for Paul, and they
Mm.
just flipped the Bruce onto this. No, it's like maybe 22 Acacia Avenue a little bit because of its tie into Charlotte the Harlot.
Mm.
But really, Bruce just comes in and he just owns these songs, and he just immediately puts his stamp on the band and the sound of the band. So great, fantastic album closer. Always a
Mm.
fan favorite when this is played live.
Mm. And it's also a favorite of Steve Harris himself, because he said in many interviews over the years that the question is, what song would you play to someone who hasn't heard Iron Maiden to demonstrate what Iron Maiden is? And most of the times, or if not every time, he just says, "Hallowed be Thy Name" is the song that he thinks has all the elements of what is Iron Maiden to him. I mean, I could say that it doesn't have every element that is Iron Maiden, because there are so much more than this song, and even if you take like the different parts and so on, but it is very much, and I think that is because he is so proud of this song that, like you say, it's so well written. It just builds and builds and builds. And when you get into the headbanging part at the end, I mean, with the guitar solos and the guitar solos themselves, Dave and Adrian is just wow, so good. And like you said with Bruce, there started to think about. You're a huge fan of Black Sabbath. It feels a bit like when Ronnie came into Black Sabbath. He was very sure of himself. Very, I think the word to use is assertive or something. Like he has. This is me. This is what I do. Here I am. Take it or leave it. And I mean, Bruce wasn't inexperienced in any way. He had also released albums prior to getting into Maiden. He had toured, not no world tour. Samson with Bruce in the band only ever played in the UK. So his first trip abroad was indeed when he went to Italy before recording the album. But I mean, he had for sure loads of stage time with Samson. He'd been in studios working with producers. The previous producer that he worked on with the Samson album they did before he left worked with Tony Platt. And according to Bruce, Tony Platt was in some ways responsible for Bruce finding the voice that we now hear on The Number of the Beast. So it's also a song that in later years became a bit or was caught up in a court case, or it didn't actually end up in court, but there were songwriters saying that they had been cheated on money and stuff like that. So what happened was that we mentioned before the singer of the band Beckett, Terry Slessor, and how he had auditioned for Iron Maiden before Number of the Beast. The band, like I said, only recorded one album. It was recorded in 1974, self-titled album. And there's a song on this album called Life's Shadow. The album is great, by the way, and the song Life's Shadow is more or less the Hallowed Be Thy Name of that album, like the epic, a big song. So what happened was, this we discovered, and when I say we, I mean me and my friend Henrik, years back, because we tried to track down the original recordings of different Maiden covers. And on the B-side for 2 Minutes to Midnight, Iron Maiden recorded a song called Rainbow's Gold, which is indeed on the album we're talking about here, the Beckett album. Listening to that album, we sort of discovered that, wait a minute, they're singing the same lines of that's in Hallowed Be Thy Name. That's weird. And the lines are the very final lines of the song, and I don't mean where Bruce repeats Hallowed Be Thy Name, but it's the mark my words, my soul lives on, please don't worry, because I've gone beyond to seek the truth. When your time is close at hand, maybe then you'll understand life down there is just a strange illusion. And those lines are from the Beckett song, Life's Shadow. So, okay, what happened here? According to Steve in an interview, he said that I thought we had dealt with this many, many years ago. But it turns out that the band Beckett, in their turn, had cheated one of their original members who co-wrote the song before they recorded. A guy, Brian Quinn was his name. Brian Quinn said that I wrote the lyrics for this song, and they stole my lyrics for the Iron Maiden song. And this they bring up like 35 years after the song's been released on Number of the Beast, which in itself is kind of weird, but I mean, it's there for everyone to hear that indeed it is the very same lines, 6 lines from the Beckett song. So the guy who was registered as the songwriter for the song, Robert Barton, apparently cheated someone else on the original credits for the Beckett song, Life's Shadow. In the end, it was settled outside of court in 2017. So, and we don't know how much money went where, but I guess going through a court case, many people just do outside of court settlement just to because it's so expensive to run a court case in court. But that's why Maiden left it off those tours around these times, because they wasn't sure on where this was going concerning these 6 lines. Steve somewhere said that the reason he used those lines were that when he wrote the lyric, he used the lines from Life's Shadow as a sort of a mock lyric for the melody when he wrote the melody. And then he rewrote a new lyric, but somehow forgot
Oops.
to whoops to rewrite those last 6 lines of the song. For me personally, I don't think that takes away anything from the song. I mean, of course, 6 lines is perhaps 4 lines too much. I think it could be a nice thing when you throw in a line or two as a tip of the hat, a little nod, like so to show where you come from and to pay respect. But maybe 6 lines is a few lines too many. But of course, Hallowed Be Thy Name has been performed many times, and it's one of the top songs when it comes to number of times performed in concert. And yeah, it's a great song. It's there is nothing bad with it, but in the same time, yeah, as we've talked about Number of the Beast and Run to the Hills, there is a bit of a burnout factor too. But just like with the other two, when you hear this song, you forget about the burnout factor and just enjoy the ride. But it's a great song.
Not only are we not going to let you be the singer in our band, well, I'm going to take some of your lyrics too. That must have really made him feel.
But it wasn't the singer who wrote the lyrics apparently.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
Well, I'm just going to steal some lyrics from your band.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, let's continue to talk about the singles.
Yeah, let's move on to the singles. So, if you're out there, if you're just into podcast land, Matthias has the actual singles here. He's holding up the Run to the Hills single that is backed with Total
Eclipse,
Eclipse.
total eclipse,
Right.
and
So,
like we,
let's discuss Total Eclipse. And when it comes to Iron Maiden, there's really no, unless you want to get into what is it on Killers? Twilight Zone, right? Twilight Zone is on the US version. It's not on the European version. And wasn't there something on Sanctuary is on the first album, the
yeah,
US version. So there's that, but this is really the only full song that's not a cover or that's not some sort of jokey type of B-side thing. This is a serious song that just didn't
mm,
land on the record, and this is really the only Iron Maiden song that I can think of. I mean, unless you might know some, but not to this fully formed where people like I mentioned earlier on, will sit to this day and have discussions about should this or should this have not been on the album.
mm. What do you like the actual song, and when did you first hear it?
I didn't hear this till I don't I don't know if I know I didn't hear it till at least the internet age. And I
Oh,
think
okay,
that I heard it somewhere on the internet uh before YouTube, before all that. But honestly, I don't remember. The first time I remember really focusing, listening to this song was I might have had some sort of Iron Maiden bootleg CD that had like B-sides and stuff like that on it. I
mm.
might have heard it there. And certainly it appeared, was it on the Castle versions of
Yeah,
these albums? Okay, that might
mm.
have been the first time that I heard that because that was some of my early Iron Maiden CDs were from the Castle
And I
versions.
think those came out in '96. 97 or something.
Yeah. So that
Mm.
makes sense because I started probably like around that time starting to buy Iron Maiden CDs, and they hadn't remastered their catalog yet. But it eventually turned up on, well, it's on streaming. I know that. And
Yeah,
I think there's a remastered version of Number of the Beast that has that on
yeah.
CD in there that's available to the world.
And it was indeed released on the Japanese version of Number of the Beast, and it's squeezed in between on the B side between Run to the Hills and Gangland.
Yeah, I even looked while we were talking just a little bit ago, and I just quickly added up in my head that the album itself runs about 40 minutes. It's like 39 minutes and 30 some seconds. So let's
Mm.
say 40 minutes. Side two is about 19, 20 minutes. Total Eclipse is, let me look at the timing of this. It's like Total Eclipse is 4 minutes, 25 seconds.
Mm.
Could they have squeezed it on the record still? Pushing it during the vinyl age, but it's not like it's never been done before. Somebody with a vinyl record that goes up into the 24-minute range.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so they could have squeezed it on the record. I think by the time we get to Power Slave,
They
they're
did here in '82.
yeah, they did. Well, right. They did with the
Yeah,
Japanese version of it.
yeah,
So it's kind of strange. I mean, again, maybe they were thinking sound quality and they were kind of like, okay, it's okay for
yeah,
the Japanese version, but we want to, for these, for the rest of the world, we want to, I don't know. I mean, I really think if they really pushed the issue, maybe the logic was like, well, we don't want a B-side that's also on the record. We want Maiden is famous for B-sides that are not on the
mm,
album.
mm.
So maybe that was just sort of their logic that we want the B side to be something that's not on the record.
Yeah. And we should keep in mind also that when they knew they had this tour of the UK booked well in advance, and the thing is that they sort of, as time went on during the autumn leading up to the recording, that there's no time for us to record a full album to be out by the time that we hit the stage on the first date uh, on the Beast on the Road tour. So the actual album wasn't out until the very end of the UK tour, and so they knew they had to release something, and they knew it was decided pretty early on that "Run to the Hills" was the song, so they recorded that. I mean, like the first song recorded for the album, because they knew it was to be the single. They had already then picked Gangland as being the B side for the single to be released in time for the UK tour. And the tour started in Dunstable on the 25th of February of 1982. And the single was released on the 12th of February in the UK. What they did was that they changed their mind because they were so excited about the energy, and the band sort of liked the song Gangland more so. And then they had already began to record Total Eclipse, so they just swapped places with those two songs. And I must have heard Total Eclipse for the first time pretty early on, as I bought my first single, maxi single, 12-inch, in '84. And by 1987, I think I had most of the maxi singles released in Europe by that time. So at the latest of 1987, probably already like in 1986, I had the Run to the Hills maxi single. And I just loved Total Eclipse. And for many years, I would even claim that Total Eclipse was like my favorite song, our Maiden favorite Maiden song. Uh, Maybe I don't stand by that anymore, but I still think Total Eclipse is an amazing song. And being quite short. It still has a lot of things going on. And for Maiden, it is kind of like we talked about Prodigal Son, a different way, a different sound, a different way of doing a Maiden song. And I think Total Eclipse is also like a different step from what they had done before with the early early with the beginning of the song, very heavy, sort of heavy riff that's go. It's almost a bit Black Sabbathy, I think. And I think Bruce's vocals is just fantastic. Since Gangland wasn't to be released until the release of the album, Total Eclipse was, along with Run to the Hills and a few other songs from the album, was the one that they choose to play on the live dates. So Total Eclipse was played on the European dates and a few select dates later on during the tour. But Gangland was never played either. So Gangland and Invaders are the two only songs that have never been played from the album, but all the other songs was indeed performed. So yeah, I'm a total fan of Total Eclipse.
Total Eclipse. I like the song. I'm of the camp that I'm okay with Gangland on the record. While you were talking, I just did a quick little scan. Peace of Mind, side two, 24 minutes. Power Slave, both side one and side two, 25 minutes and change in seconds. They could have squeezed it on the record if they wanted to. Uh, for me, I think the reason I know there's people that really love Total Eclipse. Like it's yeah, you're one of them. I know you and Henrik. If for everybody out there, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're on Spotify, go to the Layer of the Alchemist YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. And I was visiting Stockholm and got to hang out with Matthias and Henrik and the Maiden A to Z guys. And we did what I dubbed the Great Maiden Discussion. I broke it up into two parts. And at one point, I just asked everybody, no explanation, just pick Gangland or Total Eclipse. And we went down the line. And I think for me, I really like the intro. The verse is a little bit of a letdown for me until Bruce comes in with and I'm going to look at the lyrics here to make sure I get this right. Once you were, what does he sing there? Gone are the days when man looked at, that's great. But I kind of feel like the chorus is a little bit like sunrise is gone, freezing. I don't really hear a big chorus payoff in this one, and it sort of feels to me like some of the sections are a little bit forced. That double time section feels a little forced to me. Uh, it they did it better with Revelations. That's what I'd say. To me, Revelations is if this song was never on a B-side and this just was a demo, I would, in my mind, I would think, oh yeah, this is the early incarnation of Revelations. It has that same kind of feel to it, but to me, Revelations does it a lot better. And not, again, not that I don't like the song, but if I have to pick, and maybe some of that is I grew up with Gangland on a record, I just can't hear it any other way. I can't hear Run to the Hills ending any other way. I can't hear anything before Hallowed be thy name, but Gangland. But it just feels to me like it doesn't have it just feels slightly not put together. Like there's some good ideas here, but it just hasn't been completely worked out. People will say that about Invaders. We already talked about Invaders. Steve says that about Invaders, but I don't hear that in Invaders here. It just, again, I always think of Revelations, and I just think that, yeah, they kind of did this. This was the precursor to Revelations, and I think they just did it better on Revelations. And so, with that in mind, I'm okay with it not being on the record. I would have also been okay if they had stuck it on the record without taking Gangland off. They could have put this maybe before Gangland. I could picture it. Run to the Hills, Total Eclipse, Gangland, Hallowed Be Thy Name. But I wouldn't want them to have taken Gangland off the record. But then again, maybe if this was on there and I grew up with this on there, I would have felt just the reverse. But as it stands, I think it's a good song. I don't think it's quite the amazing lost, treasure that a lot of people kind of make it out to be. But that's just me personally. I know that for those out there on Spotify, Matthias is shaking his head. He's he doesn't agree. And there's a lot of people that are with you on that. I was kind of surprised when we had our Great Maiden discussion. I thought I was going to be the lone person in the room to want Gangland, because it seems like more people, if you polled Iron Maiden fans, my money would be on that more people would rather have Total Eclipse on the record than Gangland. Go look at the official Iron Maiden YouTube audio of this song. I don't even think they have a video for this because again, they released it as like a single. When they redid those 7-inch singles not too long ago, they made like I wouldn't really call it a video. It's kind of like there's some images that are just keep the same images, just sort of moving around a little bit. And there's a lot of comments on it. And you can read the comments, and definitely the comments lean way more towards this should have been on the record instead of Gangland. But I'm going to stick to my guns on this one and say that I'd rather have Gangland on the album.
They did put Total Eclipse instead of Gangland on the 40-year anniversary vinyl version that they
Oh,
put
really?
out.
Okay, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So
Hmm.
I think, I mean, it doesn't really matter uh,
Yeah, at
if
this
it's
point
on.
in this.
It doesn't matter, but I think it was a sort of a nice gesture, at least, that they sort of acknowledged that okay, we made a wrong decision here. So for you, the fans, here is the version that we would rather had put out
Yeah,
in 1982. But
yeah.
again, it's not like a huge thing for me. I think the song is available for everyone to hear and enjoy, and so yeah, no biggie. I just love Total Eclipse. That's what I'm like. So for the next single released on the 26th of April 1982 was the song Number of the Beast. It looks like this. Again, we have the face of Salvador Dali as the devil here, just as we have on the other releases too, where the devil is supposedly based on the face of Salvador Dali, which is quite funny. The B side is, of course, Remember Tomorrow. And it says here, recorded live in Italy. Is that so? We talked about that they did this tour of Italy, breaking Bruce into the band. But we also know that this is indeed not recorded live in Italy. It's the backing tracks recorded for Made in Japan. And like we said, the Bruce audition tapes that I mentioned earlier in this episode, Bruce redid a few songs. Among one was re-recording vocals over Paul Di'Anno's vocals on the Made in Japan version. It does sound a bit weird. I was never a big fan of this song even as a kid. Like we talked about, the tempo of Remember Tomorrow is way too speedy for me, at least. So, well, not much to say about that song. Do you have anything to add on the Number of the Beast single?
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah. Although I will say, I never listen to it. There's nothing. I don't find it that exciting. It's interesting hearing Bruce singing the Paul songs. Typically, I don't like that. I don't like when a singer, especially when I know it's supposed to be live, but you mentioned it's not live. And I don't like when they like redo it in the studio, and I know Bruce is going to do that later with some other songs, but there is a very, very excellent live version of this, and you can help me pronounce the name of this. You've probably heard me talk about it before. It starts with a U, Sweden, like 2010, I think. Oh 05, 2010.
Okay, yeah. Oh 05, Ullevi in Gothenburg, Göteborg in Sweden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do that
Mm.
song on there, don't they?
Yeah, they
And
did.
Bruce just
Absolutely.
sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of I don't really it reminds me of you mentioned Dio earlier, and it reminds me of uh Dio singing Ozzy songs.
Mm.
It tends to not work because you kind of have Dio's has all these vocal chops, and him trying to sing Ozzy songs sounds strange. Bruce is a little bit of the same thing with Paul's songs, but I'd say he pulls it off a little bit better. Certain things
Mm.
like Killers, for instance. But
Yeah,
there
yeah.
are certain other things where it just kind of feels like, maybe it's just Bruce. It just doesn't work with Bruce's voice. But Remember Tomorrow seems like one that he's that particular version. I've never haven't listened to many versions of it live. Uh, that particular version from that concert is
Mm.
just amazing, and Bruce just really sort of pours his heart out into this. And I think I remember talking about this on Maiden A to Z with you and Jonathan and Eric, and maybe Henrik was there too, where they mentioned something about this was one of his audition songs, and so it sort of holds. There's something about that, the fact that
Mm.
it was like one of the early songs that he sang on with Iron Maiden in the audition process, and so yeah, the B side. Nothing to get excited about.
No.
But if you're out there, search out the concert that Matthias mentioned. If you just type in Iron Maiden Live Sweden, it'll pop up. For those of you
Yeah.
who don't know
Yeah.
how to spell the name of that city or town or whatever it was.
Yeah. I think we should talk a bit about not that much in detail, but talk about the actual sleeve of the album. Like we mentioned in the previous episode when we talked about the singles for Killers, this design was indeed made for the Purgatory single, and I think that kind of makes sense with the lyric for Purgatory, who's controlling who,
Yeah.
strange reality, and everything. Uh, Apparently, the design and the idea behind the marionette thing here is based on a comic. I think. Uh, Help me out here. What's the name? Doctor Strange, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that Marvel?
Yeah. Marvel
Yeah,
Comics.
yeah. So Derek Riggs, the illustrator, had seen this illustration for the comic, and he took the idea of the marionette thing. And this is the first album properly, I would say, where you can sit and watch small details and
Yeah.
watch all these people or creatures that have ended up in somewhere in the underworld, warmer. And I think this is it's really nice. They had a bit of a trouble with the colors. There was some technical issues with the color of red and blue. And if you take a look on this is a Harvest US version. This is a bit redundant for you listening on Spotify, but I'm showing the original sleeve for the album, and you can see the sky behind Eddie, the big Eddie, is very more light blue than on
Oh, wow. I never knew
uh,
that. Yeah, that's
the
almost
later version.
gray.
Yeah, and apparently that had to do with the printing and the colors because the devil was too dense in its red, so they had to take care of that somehow, and maybe they could have some action done to it now with modern computer technology, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, great cover, and of course to have used that for a single would have been a waste. And by that time, Rod, the manager, Rod Smallwood, kept it because he thought it was too good for a throwaway single like Purgatory. And that was a good decision. As it turned out, then Steve wrote this song, The Number of the Beast, with hellfires and nightmares and everything. So it worked out very, very neatly in the end.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's
Okay.
before we wrap it up, let's say a few words about Clive and his
Yeah.
departure from the band.
Yeah. I think that, Clive, a very special place in most Maiden fans' hearts, I would say. In mine also. That said, I'm a Nico guy. Nico is my, so to speak, my drummer for Iron Maiden. But many think that Clive was the guy. So why was he forced out of the band? Just like with Paul Di'Anno, it all comes down to reliability. And the band and Steve particularly thought that Clive was maybe not didn't take his job serious enough. It was too much party, too much indulgence, and that he messed up a few shows. And it actually got so bad that Nico McBrain, who had been touring with Maiden as a drummer for Trust, was put on a so-called retainer, that he was on standby, that if it doesn't work out, you jump in so we can finish the tour. And that's not a good thing if you feel like we have to
Yeah.
have a guy standing by in the sidelines here just in case our drummer doesn't cut his job. So there's been stories told many times that Clive played with a bucket beside him because he was throwing up, being so hungover from partying the night before and stuff like that. Clive himself think that it's just exaggerated, and it wasn't that bad, and that he should have been given a new chance. But I think, as with many bands that are on their way upwards and gaining popularity, time is of essence. And just like with Paul Di'Anno, maybe if they had taken a break for a few months, maybe Paul would have come around and been back in the band. And I think it would have been the same with Clive if they had taken a half a year off just to get him to sort his stuff out. But there wasn't enough time. They had tours to make, records to record,
Yeah.
and breaking America at that speed. They played almost 190 gigs on the Beast on the Road tour, which ended in Japan in late December. That's a lot of gigs for 1 year. And like I said, the tour started in February. So it wasn't like 12 complete months of touring for those 188 gigs or whatever it was. So it was a very hectic schedule, and they were opening up in the US for bands like Judas Priest again. They were opening up for Scorpions, 38 Special. So it was important gigs, of course. And they made a first trip to Australia, made very many gigs in Australia at the end of '82. And they ended with a few gigs in Japan, which came to be the last gigs of Clive Burr. And it's quite funny because what happened directly after is that they just changed places. Nico left Trust, for Iron Maiden, and Clive left Iron Maiden to join Trust, but just for one album, and then he left the band. Uh, there's been this thing that said that Clive Burr was in like the first version of Alcatraz with Graham Bonnet and
Whoa.
Yngwie Malmsteen. And I tried to find some information because he's not on any albums. And apparently he was just in the band for a week or something.
Yeah.
He didn't think the band was to be based in the US, or excuse me, in the UK. He didn't think the band was to be based in the US, but in the UK. And when he
Yeah.
realized that he should move to LA, he got out of the band. He also played in a so-called super group called Gog Magog,
Yeah.
and it's quite funny because that band had Paul Di'Anno on vocals. This is in
Uh-huh.
1985. And they had Janik Gers,
Yeah.
who had been playing with Gillan before and ended up in Iron Maiden. Pete Willis from Def Leppard was in this super group, along with Neil Murray, the bass player, who had been Whitesnake, must have been his last gig before joining this Gog Magog. And the Gog Magog was a project of a manager who set the band together and wrote the songs and everything. Yeah. So the band members only were like performing monkeys,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, it's not
And
very good. Yeah.
no, actually, it's if you haven't heard it, check it out. But it's don't expect to be blown away.
Yeah,
it's
it's just a
it's
little historical curiosity.
absolutely, absolutely.
Uh
So
yeah, and
yeah,
like you said, you couldn't at this point it's I mean Iron Maiden taking 6 months off in 2025 is one thing, but
yeah,
not
yeah.
then. 6 months is a literal etern I mean 6 months back then, bands were releasing albums every year. That so 6 months was like a huge, huge part of your career. You couldn't take 6 months off, not for a band that was on the rise, trying to get it together. It couldn't be done. So at that stage in the game, they couldn't wait around for people to get their act together. There was no tomorrow. It was they were there. You had to be there. You had to be ready to go. As I mentioned earlier, they were starting to pick up momentum here. They're really starting to pick up momentum here. And it's basically hang on or fall off,
Mm,
that's kind of what I viewed this as is the band is starting to pick up steam and hang on or you're going to get left behind. And unfortunately,
mm,
Paul and Clive both got left behind. But okay,
mm.
got any final thoughts on Number of the Beast before we wrap it up?
I must say that listening to the album, it's a great album. But I have to be honest. If it's very rarely I pick up Number of the Beast to listen to it. I mean, even though I think Number of the Beast is a much better album than Killers, I am more likely to play Killers because it's in a strange way more fresh and interesting to me. Number of the Beast has all these absolute monuments of classic songs, but the burnout factor is perhaps it doesn't make me go and think, oh, I should listen to
Yeah.
Number of the Beast now because I've heard those songs so many times. But with that said, I think it's a fantastic album. Just one final thought about Clive Burr. We talked about a lot about Clive, about his drumming, his style, and his speed, even. And I think that in a strange way, Clive Burr was more a metal drummer than Nico ever was. and
Interesting.
uh,
Yeah.
uh, and that is quite interesting because I mean the background for Clive wasn't exactly playing this kind of music, but it's like when he got into Maiden, he found the metal drumming, and I think the influence he had on future metal drummers is very is I think it's he have had a greater impact on metal and drumming than Nico has had on metal and drumming, style wise. Because Nico is much more in his own league, his own game, uh, whereas Clive sort of made a template for how to play heavy metal uh, with accuracy. Even though he has a background, and you can hear like in a song like Gangland, it's like a super shuffle swing type of song, but it's played like a metal drummer
Hmm.
would play a swing. So it's not Bill Ward anywhere.
Yeah.
Whereas Nico McBrain has more of a Bill Ward vibe, just to make a stark comparison. But yeah, yeah, that was my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold off on my thoughts on Nico for when we do Peace of Mind because I do have some thoughts on that about the difference in style between Clive and Nico. But I think I'm gonna hold
Mm,
off on that till Peace of Mind. So,
yeah.
all right. Well, yeah. I mean, for me, just the final thoughts. I agree with you. There is some. I don't reach for this album as much because of the burnout of songs like Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills, Hallowed Be Thy Name, maybe even to a certain degree, Children of the Damned. I already mentioned that I 22 Acacia Avenue isn't my favorite on here. Neither is The Prisoner. So the songs that maybe honestly Invaders and Gangland are, if I factor out the fact that I'm a little tired of hearing the classics on this, when I grab this record, I'm kind of Gangland, Invaders. Those are the ones that grab my ear because, again, I haven't heard them 8 million times and they never really played those live. So, but it's a
Mm,
classic album and there's no denying that. And it's a hugely important album for Iron Maiden. It's like when they really, the rocket ship is really starting to take off here. So for that reason, it's a very important record for the band. It's a very important record for heavy metal in general.
mm,
Uh, it's just a monumental album.
mm,
Oh, okay. Well, we'd like to thank everybody out there for listening, or if you're watching on YouTube. If you want more content, you can go to the Layer of the Alchemist YouTube channel and check out all the videos we have there. I also do a Black Sabbath podcast with my friend Darren called Into the Void, a Black Sabbath podcast available on all podcast networks. I also do a podcast with author Martin Popoff, AC/DC, Kicked into Teeth, an AC/DC podcast that's available on all the streaming services. Matthias has a band, Dead Cosmonaut. I'm pretty confident to say that if you're a fan of Iron Maiden, then I think you'll find something to like or a lot to like in Dead Cosmonaut. So make sure you check them out. They're on all the streaming services also. So, all right, that wraps us up here for the Number of the Beast, and we'll see you all with Peace of Mind.